October 5th, 1994, 3 a.m. and the chalet in the Swiss village of Sherry erupts in flames. When firefighters finally force entry into the basement 3 hours later, they find something that will haunt them forever. 23 bodies arranged in a perfect circle, all dressed in ceremonial robes in red, white, and gold, with plastic bags secured over their heads. But here's what makes the blood run cold. 10 of them had bullet holes in their skulls, execution style. This wasn't a mass suicide. Someone had murdered these people, arranged their bodies in a ritual formation, then set the building on fire. What investigators found in the ashes would lead to 25 more bodies in Quebec, 60 more in the French Alps, and the horrifying realization that they were dealing with an international death cult that had planned this for years. The Order of the Solar Temple killed 74 people dead across 3 continents in one coordinated week. Millionaires, Olympic athletes, civil servants who believed their leaders were reincarnated Knights Templar who would guide them through death to the star Sirius. Today, we're uncovering how 2 con men built a death cult that murdered dozens while convincing others to kill themselves willingly, and why the evidence suggests some members may still be active today. But first, I need to tell you about Emmanuel Dutold, a 3-month-old infant who was stabbed 50 times with a wooden stake because cult leaders declare him the antichrist. The bodies in Sherry were in the basement of a farmhouse converted into a ceremonial temple, with 23 people arranged in 3 concentric circles facing a central altar. On that altar sat golden chalices, ritual daggers, and an elaborate painting of a rose and cross, the symbol of the Rosicrucians, with body wearing ceremonial robes, outer circle in red, middle circle in white, inner circle in gold, like ranks in some twisted spiritual military. When forensic teams examined the bodies, they discovered not everybody had died the same way. 18 had plastic bags over their heads, suggesting suffocation or drug overdose. But 10 had been shot in the head before the bags were placed, and 5 showed signs of struggle with defensive wounds. This wasn't a peaceful group suicide, but murder, with some of these people have been executed. The incendiary devices were sophisticated with multiple timers, designed to create maximum destruction, meant to burn so hot that bodies would be unidentifiable and evidence destroyed. The devices almost worked as the building collapsed, but the basement, being underground, partially survived. And that's how investigators found the note, handwritten on parchment paper, placed on the altar, reading, "We are leaving this earth to find a new dimension of truth and absolution, far from the hypocrisies of this world." Within hours, Swiss police got a call from a colleague 95 miles away about a luxury ski chalet in Salvan with smoke pouring from it, where inside they found 3 bodies arranged in beds as if sleeping. Joseph de Memboro, 70, the cult's co-founder, his wife Jocelyn, 53, and their son Ellie, 12. In de Memboro's bedroom, investigators found a suitcase packed with 300,000 Swiss francs next to a handwritten will and detailed instructions for what should happen after his death. De Memboro had planned this meticulously, knew he was going to die, and had arranged it all. But the real horror was 3,000 miles away in Morton Heights, Quebec, where Canadian police found 25 bodies, 3 of which stopped investigators cold. Tony Dutold, 35, his wife Nikki, 32, and their infant son Emmanuel, just 3 months old. The parents had been murdered, stabbed multiple times, But Emmanuel had been stabbed over 50 times with a wooden stake, driven through his tiny body over and over in a ritual killing, with a note next to the baby's body reading "The Antichrist had been eliminated." 3 crime scenes, 3 countries, all discovered within 48 hours, with the coordination staggering as someone had planned simultaneous death across 2 continents down to the hour. The victim list read like a who's who of European Canadian society. Wealthy business people, civil servants, journalists, and Edith Vunet, wife of the 1960 Olympic ski champion Jean Vunet, with a total estimated wealth of the 53 victim from October 1994 exceeding over $93 million. To understand what these educated people with everything to live for were doing dead in ceremonial robes, we need to meet the 2 men who built this death machine. Joseph de Memboro, born in France in 1924, who on paper was a jeweler, but in reality was a con artist with fraud convictions who could read people and knew what wealthy seekers wanted to hear. He claimed he was the 3rd reincarnation of Osiris, the Egyptian god of death, said he's been a Knights Templar in the 14th century and was also a skilled magician, a detail that would prove crucial. Luc Jouret was a Belgian homeopathic doctor, charismatic lecturer, and a true believer in New Age mysticism who gave expensive seminars across Europe on health, ecology, and spirituality, and was handsome, eloquent, convinced that Earth faced imminent ecological collapse. He claimed to be the reincarnation of both Jesus Christ and the 14th century Knight Templar at once. In 1984, these 2 men founded the Order of the Solar Temple in Geneva, creating a theology designed to appeal to wealthy seekers. You are a reincarnated Knight Templar giving elite identity. Earth is facing ecological apocalypse, creating urgent crisis, and escape is possible through cosmic transit to Sirius, offering hope. And only the chosen few will make it, providing it exclusivity. They didn't recruit the desperate, but recruited the successful, because successful people have the most need to believe that there is something beyond material success. Jouret gave public lectures at $200 to $500 per ticket, and at these lectures, talent spotters identified likely candidates who were then invited to advanced seminars and private circles. By the time someone was invited to join the inner circle of the order, they had already invested tens of thousands of dollars and months of their life. And once you were in, de Memboro made sure you stayed in, because he could perform miracles. During the ceremonies at isolated chateaus in the Alps, members witnessed astonishing things. Masters appeared as holographic figures who delivered messages. Laser beams descended from the ceiling, blessing participants, and voices of ancient spirits spoke. Members were convinced they were experiencing genuine supernatural contact, but they weren't. Police later discovered fiber optic cable hidden in walls, laser projection concealed in ceilings, professional audio systems, and holographic projection equipment. De Memboro had spent hundreds of thousands of members' donated dollars on special effects that convinced educated people they were witnessing miracles. The bills were found, the instruction manuals were found, receipts from stage magic suppliers were found. It was all fake, every bit of it. But the members never knew, and that's what made what came next possible. As police investigated, they discovered this wasn't a cult that suddenly went wrong, but was designed from the beginning to end in mass death. At its peak, the order had an estimated 500 members worldwide, with chapters in Switzerland, France, Canada, Australia, and Martinique, organized in 3 tiers. Neophytes were outer circle members who paid $2,000 to $5,000 annually. Initiates were inner circle members who would donate massive amounts and participated in full rituals. And the awakened were the elite 50 to 75 people who had been told the complete truth. Earth was dying, and only through death they would transit to Sirius. The ceremonies were elaborate, borrowing from Templar mythology and Egyptian mysticism, with members wearing robes, carrying ceremonial swords, and being addressed as knights and ladies, gradually being exposed ceremony by ceremony to increasingly dark theology. The transit doctrine taught that death was an illusion, the physical body a temporary vessel, and when shed through proper ritual, consciousness would transit to Sirius B, the white dwarf star. Why Sirius? Because he appears in multiple esoteric traditions. Ancient Egypt connected to Isis. Theosophy claimed it housed ascended masters, and the New Age movement made it a focal point for spiritual seekers. Dimembro taught that Sirius B was inhabited by beings of pure light, awaiting the chosen, and the physical death performed with proper ritual would allow consciousness to journey 8.6 light years to this higher dimension. It sounds absurd, but these people had witnessed miracles, seeing masters appear, and experienced what they believed was supernatural contact. So why wouldn't the rest be true? The transit doctrine was introduced gradually, first as a metaphor, then as literal possibility, finally as imminent necessity. So by 1993, the inner circle was being told the transit would happen within a year or two, and they needed to prepare. But not everyone was ready, and that's where the first murders happened. Tony Dutot was a Swiss member who had worked as Dimembro's electrotechnician, which meant he knew the miracles were fake, because he had installed the equipment. In 1991, Tony and his wife Nikki had a baby boy they named Emmanuel, and Dimembro was furious, because the couple had conceived without cult permission. And worse, Dimembro's daughter, Emanuele, the cosmic child, central to cult mythology, was being upstaged. Dimembro began telling the inner circle that Emmanuel was the antichrist sent by dark forces to prevent the transit. The Dutots understandably left the cult and moved to Quebec to start over. But on the night of October 4th, 1994, one day before the mass death, a hit squad arrived at their apartment. They murdered the parents before stabbing the 3-month-old infant more than 50 times with a wooden stake in a ritual killing designed to destroy the Antichrist. The murder team left a note, flew back to Switzerland, and within 24 hours would be dead themselves in Sherry. By late 1993 and 1994, the order faced multiple crises. Members' money was running out as expensive ceremonies and Dimembro's luxury lifestyle of Ferraris and mansions cost millions. And some members were demanding refunds or threatening lawsuits. And Dimembro's health was failing. He had diabetes, heart problems, and was 70 years old. So Dimembro and Jured faced a choice to admit the Kong and face prosecution, or go out in a blaze of glory. They choose death, and they framed it as transcendence. Evidence found after the massacre showed at least 6 months of detailed planning, including purchase of incendiary devices, acquisition of weapons, selection of death sites, division of members into those who would transit and those who would stay, and coordination across multiple countries. Some members were eager to transit, with letters found in their possessions showing excitement about finally going home to Sirius, while others were coerced, and some were simply murdered. Swiss investigators determined at least 15 of the 53 victims from October 1994 were murdered, shot, or drugged against their will before the fires were set. Dr. Jean-Marie Abergel, a French occult expert, identifies several factors explaining how you convince someone to die for a lie. The transit wasn't introduced on day one, but took years. So by the time members heard that we need to die to reach Sirius, they had already accepted so many impossible things, this seemed logical. Members had invested millions and years of their lives, so admitting it was fake meant admitting they had wasted everything, making it psychologically easier to double down. And members believed they were special, reincarnated Templars chosen for spiritual evolution. So dying for this identity felt noble, and everyone in the community was doing it, making not participating feel like abandonment. But perhaps the most powerful factor was that some members genuinely believed. They had experienced the miracles, felt the presence of masters, and in their minds, death wasn't an ending, but graduation. Edith Volnett left a note reading, "Death is not the end, it is the beginning of true life among the stars." She believed, and it got her killed. But the story doesn't end in October 1994, because 14 months later, they struck again. On December 23, 1995, 14 months after the first transit, a forestry worker in the French Alps spotted smoke, and when police arrived, they found 16 bodies arranged in a perfect star formation, with each body positioned at a point and feet facing inward toward the central fire. Autopsies revealed all had ingested powerful sedatives. The children had been drugged first, then suffocated, and the adult had arranged themselves in the star formation, taking the drugs, and waited for death before someone set the incendiary devices. But what made investigators realize this was part of a larger plan was that letters had been sent to French media outlets before the death, announcing the second transit and explaining these members were late and were now completing their journey to Sirius. Someone had planned this, written those letters, mailed them, and timed them to arrive after the death. But who? Demembro and Jurek were dead, having died in 1994 transits. So who organized the 1995 death? Investigators focused on Michael Debachnik, a Swiss orchestra conductor and prominent member who had written some of the cult's spiritual texts. But he claimed he had left before the death. Police arrested him in 2001, but the case fell apart as no direct evidence linked him to the planning of the murders, and he was acquitted, though survivors remains divided about whether he was the hidden grandmaster who had orchestrated everything. On March 3, 1997, 2 years after the second transit, 5 more bodies were discovered in a burning house in Quebec, arranged in a cross formation, with among the dead a French member described as a spiritual guide, 3 other adults from the Quebec chapter, and 2 teenagers ages 13 and 16. With these 5 dead, the Order of the Solar Temple finally went silent. The final count came to 53 in October 1994, 16 dead in December 1995, and 5 dead in March 1997, for a total of 74 confirmed deaths across 3 separate coordinated events over 3 years. The most credible theory suggests a core group of 20 to 30 hardcore members escaped detection and continued to maintain their beliefs privately. The order didn't need a massive organization to continue, just a few true believers maintaining the faith and waiting for the right moment. To understand the Solar Temple, you need to understand where it came from. Because Dimembro and Juret didn't invent this theology from scratch, but weaponized centuries-old traditions. The order claimed descent from the Rosicrucians, an esoteric tradition dating to 17th century Europe, based on mysterious manifestos describing a secret brotherhood of enlightened mystics. Both leaders claimed to be reincarnated Knights Templar, tapping into one of Western civilization's most powerful mythologies. For 700 years, esoteric groups have claimed Templar descent, and the Solar Temple was just one more, but with lethal consequences. Because the Templar mythology provided elite identity-telling members, they were medieval warrior mystics reincarnated. Why Sirius? Because it appears in multiple esoteric traditions. Ancient Egypt connected Sirius to the goddess Isis and cycles of death and rebirth. Theosophy taught that it was home to the ascended masters. And by the 1970s and 80s, the New Age movement had made Sirius a focal point of channelers and UFO contactees. Dimembro and Juret took all this, teachings that Sirius B was home to being pure consciousness and the physical death performed with proper ritual would allow the soul to journey across space to this higher dimension. And it sounds insane, but consider the context. These members had witnessed what they believed were genuine miracles, experienced altered states, and invested everything in this worldview. Once you accept that consciousness can survive death and that reincarnation is real, transit to Sirius doesn't sound that much crazier. But investigators discovered the Solar Temple wasn't isolated. It was part of a broader wave of apocalyptic groups that moved toward mass death in the 1990s. With the Branch Davidians in Waco seeing 76 people die in 1993, the Solar Temple killing 74 between 1994 and 1997, Shcherenko launching the Tokyo subway attack in 1995, Heaven's Gate seeing 39 people die in 1997, and the movement for restoration of the Ten Commandments killing 778 in Uganda. 5 major death cult events in 5 years, different countries and theologies, but yearly, similar patterns. New Age commercialization meant gurus competed with extreme teachings, and the internet's emergence allowed fringe groups to find each other. These common elements push multiple groups toward mass death simultaneously. 29 years after the first transit, the Solar Temple remains one of the most disturbing cases in cult research because of what it reveals about human nature. The victims included doctors, lawyers, Olympic athletes, and civil servants who were sophisticated. Successful individuals and intelligence can actually make you more vulnerable to cults because intelligent people are better at rationalizing and can construct elaborate justifications for improbable beliefs. Those who lost family members still grapple with impossible questions about how smart people fell for obvious fraud, whether loved ones were murdered or willing participants, and whether they could have saved them or not. Jean Bonnet, who lost his wife in 1994 and son in 1995, spent his final years trying to understand, giving interviews and cooperating with researchers, but never finding satisfactory answers. Somewhere out there, someone is gathering followers, teaching them that they're special, promising secret knowledge, and building toward another transit. The question isn't whether it will happen again, but whether we will recognize it in time. Remember their names, remember their death, and remember the lesson they died teaching us. The most dangerous lies are the ones that make us feel special. Thanks for watching The Dark Disciples, and I'll see you next time.